Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and today I want to talk about the recent stuff that's been happening with artists and fellow animators getting into generative AI, and how some of these artists are very pro AI or very supportive of it at least. And these are animators and artists that I know personally, which I think makes it really surreal for me because there's a part of me that's really surprised, and there's a part of me that's kind of like, okay, I can kind of see why you do that. So I definitely want to talk about my thoughts on that and definitely my opinions. Now, there have been multiple different reasons why artists are getting into generative AI. Some have said to increase their productivity, others to keep updated with tech and not falling behind. Some artists see the tech as a way to fully envision their projects. Others are just doing it for the money, and others are doing it for back-end stuff. Now, when a well-known or well-respected artist and animator goes into generative AI, expressions for disappointment are overwhelming. And it's one of those things where you lose trust within that community. And when some of these artists decide to backpedal or drop the usage of AI and express that they're no longer touching AI, some are willing to cautiously forgive them, others have decided they've crossed the line and that's already irredeemable. For those non-artists or non-animators watching my video, touching AI in our community is like necromancy in the magic world. It's forbidden, it's despised, and it'll get you ostracized. Now, necromancy in a fantasy setting is pretty cool. I'm making reference of how these fictional settings view necromancy in their magic system. You're going to alienate the general art and animation community. And if you are familiar with that community and you decide to do something like go into AI, I mean, how could you not know? Now, there's a lot of reasons why artists and animators are against AI. Scraping from work without consent, the plagiarism machine, the effect on our environment, the removal of crucial parts are very important in the creative process, the loss of jobs, and encouraging the gambling addiction with tokens and AI. And of course, AI psychosis. I know someone who went through that. Now, I've made videos talking about the subject matter of generative AI and how I feel about it, especially in the arts and creative space, like animation, for example. In the beginning, I was trying to find a middle ground of a discussion for the usage of Gen AI. And as time goes by and the more I learn about it, it's one of those things where I do want to avoid using it in my work, that is. Now, over time, I've come to a point in my life where every choice I make as a creator or as an artist or whatever that is, it's going to dictate the type of creator or artist or the type of person I want to embody and the types of values I do want to carry. And it definitely contributes to the types of works I do want to make. If you've been following my channel for years, I've always talked and showed the process of my work. I've talked about the self-discovery, the decision-making that goes behind it, and the constant learning that I get from it. I think about each tool or each brushstroke that I make. I mean, my YouTube videos are basically just me talking about stuff with some process videos playing in the background. And I always think about how I can improve for the future project. Even though some of that work is very monotonous and very cumbersome, like coloring and cleanup, it really does teach you a lot about your skill, your muscle memory, and the sensitivity to the art form. While I do hate the laborious and mundane parts of the process, it does teach me a lot about patience. And it does allow me to sort of keep moving forward with my work while shutting my brain off. It taught me a lot about how to gauge the resources I do have, how much I want to use, how much I don't want to use, how much I can save, and having a very clear, decisive solution for that. Another thing that's also important for me is community. A lot of things that I do notice that AI tends to promote is you can now make your own fully animated thing without hiring a studio or without getting a lot of people involved. You can just make the entire thing by yourself without having anyone else. But that also makes the process a lot more isolating. Like when I was working my Dusk Flight short, I hired some animators, I hired a sound designer, a composer, and voice actors. And seeing everyone's effort put this thing together was super rewarding. I always got super excited when a voice actor would send me their takes for the characters that I came up with, and seeing them come to life with voice lines and an animator's touch on them reminded me about the great parts of the community. Now, I personally do think that the animation community does need a lot of work. I think it's really flawed in a lot of ways, but I do think it's important to have a community at least. Because at the end of the day, we're only here to help each other out, whether it's for work, whether it's jobs, or whether it's just essential needs. I personally don't think you should replace that with AI. And so when I saw some of my favorite artists or my heroes get into AI, there's a part of me that's also really disappointed just because some of these artists were very loud in their stance against AI. So it is weird to eventually see them spearhead the usage of AI in a quote-unquote positive way. But there's also a part of me that's also kind of exhausted and tired to sort of try to understand why they do it too. But hearing some artists get into AI and knowing what they do or what they stand for, like I've talked to some of these people one-on-one, or just hear them talk about it from their viewpoint, you can kind of connect the dots of how they would come to the conclusion of supporting AI. Like examples of these that I can point out is to be highly productive while trying to keep up. There's a sense of fear of being somewhat left behind, whether it's relevance or whether it's being in touch with the modern process. The fear of losing something, whether that's status, something tangible or monetary, or whether it's to eliminate a step in the process that you don't want to be involved with. These are some common things that I do see with artists getting into AI and justifying their usage of generative AI. And I do think that some of these artists are willing to sort of weigh out the cons of AI and justify their uses of AI, like them convincing themselves that they're using it the right ethical way and that the costs are worth it. Now, there's a couple of reasons of these artists getting into AI that I don't necessarily agree with. I think the first one that I've heard multiple times from different artists is that they need to be the ones to champion AI so they can teach us and show us how to properly use it, how to make it work for the artists. They want to be the leading example for that. They'll use their artistic experience, skill, and their body of work to justify that and to try to relate to other fellow artists as a way to sort of convince them that them doing AI is a good thing. I really don't like it when artists do these type of things and say that they represent us. Like, bro, no one asked. Another argument that I hear is that we need to fully understand AI. We need to use AI to better understand it. We need to learn about it. We need to take advantage of it. We can't fall behind. You fear what you don't know. And you trying it out and experimenting with it or seeing what it is, maybe they'll give you some clarity of what that is. But the thing is that you don't need to know everything to say, this is not for me. You can learn enough about it that prevents you from actually using it. Another argument that I've heard is that AI is the only way for them to realize their full vision without having to be quote unquote expensive, costly, and it's a limitless way to fulfill their creativity. This is why I really don't like the notion of creativity should be limitless. Guys, limitations are important. It gives you a clear direction and a target. It forces you to utilize what you have and what you don't have. So if you're someone that's in animation that wants to make their own show, instead of making a fully animated thing, try making a rough animatic, a storyboard with some sound, with some voice acting, some music, and it's edited. Or utilize a direction that forces you to stick to limitations. And then let's say it builds a following, it builds traction, at least you have a foundation, you can expand upon it later on with future support. You really don't need AI to express unless you actually need AI to come up with ideas. Look, if an artist just said that they're using generative AI for their own benefit, they just want to crank out stuff without the use of other artists, they want to exploit the tech, it's for their own self-benefit, I'd have a little more respect because at least they're being honest. When someone tries to justify it, and not only that, tries to get me to agree with them and jump on the bandwagon with them, and knowing that the thing that they're trying to sell does more harm, it's hard to trust that. Now, something that I do notice is that people who are said to be anti-generative AI or anti-AI will use AI in other departments like writing their emails, documentation, research, organizing their notes, or vibe coding. Like they'll use AI when it's not a threat to their line of work. And I do think that they have a bias of when they decide to be against AI or not. They'll use AI for other things, but when it starts to affect their line of work, that's when they say they're super against AI. And I see that happen. I understand why it happens, but it's made me realize that some people decide to be very selective on when they decide to hate AI or when they just use it on the side for other facets in their life. Now, it's not my place to speak or judge on that behalf because AI has been pretty much put everywhere. Like when I was trying to call the DMV today, I was talking to a fully functional AI that answered all my questions. When I was trying to read a really long article, I'm suddenly bombarded with AI summaries of it. When I'm trying to do a bit of research or find answers, Google has their whole AI summary that's right on the top. I think when it comes to acceptable or unacceptable uses of AI, people have certain levels. Some people will disregard AI completely, others will use it only for organizational stuff, others will use it for like correction stuff, like grammar or whatnot, or they'll use it in certain departments that's not related to their work. Every time I want to respond to an email, Gmail has already pre-written an AI-generated response that's, somewhat well written. It doesn't really sound like me at all. It uses a lot of longer words, so I usually respond to emails in like a sentence and that's it. Some will use AI for the mundane labor stuff, let's say auto-naming files, batch naming, which is super useful. I mean, I prefer to do it myself in a lot of cases because I have a specific way of batch renaming or organizing my files. Stuff like in-betweening and coloring and things like cleanup, I do think that there's something there, but I strongly believe there's still value in doing those steps manually because it does teach you a lot. I've heard cases of 3D artists using it for non-important assets that appear far in the background or don't have much importance at all. But you can also build your own asset library, reuse them in multiple projects, or purchase licenses for assets online. Some will use it for their own personal benefit, whether it's for leisure or whether it's just completely for themselves. Now, talking about some of these prolific artists getting into AI, some of these guys I know personally, and when people online who don't really know them paint them as this evil person, it's not something that I do agree with, and I do notice that a lot of people just want to dogpile on that and paint them as this horrible person. Do I think these artists are free from criticism? Absolutely not. And they should be able to hear that. Do I think these artists should receive, let's say, death threats or discriminatory stuff or shit said about people that are not involved, like their family? That is inexcusable. Do I think these artists should be forgiven easily? That's really up to the community to decide, because there are some things that cross the line for them, and some, they're more tolerable. For some, it's just the idea of touching AI. For others, it's maybe a weird comment that already makes things irredeemable. If you want my opinion, subscribe to my Patreon. Just kidding. One of the biggest lessons I have learned throughout my time in the industry is not to put heroes or people that you admire on a pedestal. I think one thing I really hate about our industry and our community is that we tend to worship certain artists way too much. And when they do something that goes against our paradigm, usually two things happen. Number one, we let it slide because they're great at what they do. They're a genius, whatever that is. The second thing, the hate for them is so much bigger than it should be. Unless they did something that was truly evil, they deserve the hate. But I think one big lesson that I learned in life is that just expect that no one's perfect. People are just trying to figure this out. We're living in a really weird time, too, where a lot of us are questioning and tackling something that we know has some detrimental value. I'm not saying this excuses anyone tackling into AI is free from criticism. Another thing is that heroes will disappoint you. Treat everyone like they're a fellow person that you happen to pass by in everyday life. They're just people. I mean, if it wasn't for their career standing, what else would they be? But it's definitely going to take them a while to build that trust again. If you're an artist or an animator that's thinking about getting into generative AI for your work, you know the consequences for that with the community. Anyways, share your thoughts. That's all. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.